So it's really just framing Bitcoin in a way that people can understand that there is a lot of growth potential still, and to prepare them for $1 million Bitcoin and upwards, which I think some people can't see. They think, oh, well, it's grown so much. There's a diminishing return. That's a common one that people throw out there, but there is no such thing as diminishing returns when you're replacing an existing monetary system that is inferior. It just goes away and it dies. So it's not so much that I think we're going to be talking about multi-billion-dollar Bitcoin. If you priced it in terms of fiat, yes. But I think once you cross the few million mark, maybe in the 5 million range, I think that's when people stop accepting fiat currencies and they just accept sats. And that just becomes the new norm. Bitcoin will replace the dollar, and it's going to happen very quickly. People aren't going to expect it, and everything just gets priced into sats or Bitcoin.
Samson Mow is one of the most engaging voices of this financial revolution as Bitcoin gets closer to breaking yet another record high. In addition to being a digital currency, he presents Bitcoin as the most audacious financial freedom experiment ever attempted by humanity, marking a significant break from centuries of centralized authority. For many decades, having faith in wealth means depending on middlemen, such as banks, governments, and even gold-backed systems, only to have that faith undermined by systemic failure, corruption, and manipulation. However, Bitcoin altered the story. The invention of Satoshi Nakamoto was more than simply a piece of code. It was a declaration, an appeal to eliminate the weaknesses of antiquated institutions and swap them out for decentralized, uncorruptible empowerment. In contrast to gold, which lost its appeal due to human desire, Bitcoin is untouchable, resilient to corruption, and has boundless potential. A stronghold against manipulation and an indication of optimism in a time of economic uncertainty, it is more than just a financial instrument. It represents a vision for a more equitable and free future. Now, let's hear from Samson Mow himself.
So I would say overall, the time frame on which Bitcoin is accelerating on seems to be faster than I initially anticipated. So we've had a nation-state attack of sorts with China clamping down on mining, and we've had a nation-state, El Salvador, adopting Bitcoin. So in my view, these things would have happened, maybe in a few years' time, but it's happened already. So I would say it's accelerating. In terms of price action, I think we're behind though. Like we're just hovering around almost 100K right now, or 0.1 M. And I think we should have been here already. Like I think this year we should have been well into the mid 500 range, 500K range, if not 1 million. And for that delay, I would largely say it's a holdover from all of the fallout from all the fraudulent activities that have been undertaken by and large, the crypto ecosystem. So we're sort of being punished for what they've done. And this is the result. Like Bitcoin price is muted. I think for Bitcoin, we're not yet primed for bigger numbers. And this is why I started promoting the M notation or million notation. Like some people call it the Mo notation, and some have called it like a Michael notation for Michael Saylor. But it's just the next logical step. So we're already talking about Bitcoin in terms of K, right? 1,000. It's not 100,000, it's 100K. So the logical extension is to go to M and then eventually, B for billion. But there is no really an upper bound for where Bitcoin will go. I believe we're going to cross this threshold. You can call it the Veblen threshold or some threshold whereby we start to demonetize other large pools of existing assets like gold, real estate, and whatnot. And then it just accelerates from there upwards. So I think that sweet spot somewhere in the 400 to 600K range. And that's when we really start to take gold market cap away from that and move it to Bitcoin. So it's really just framing Bitcoin in a way that people can understand that there is a lot of growth potential still, and to prepare them for $1 million Bitcoin and upwards, which I think some people can't see. They think, oh, well, it's grown so much. There's a diminishing return. That's a common one that people throw out there, but there is no such thing as diminishing returns when you're replacing an existing monetary system that is inferior. It just goes away and it dies. So it's not so much that I think we're going to be talking about multi-billion-dollar Bitcoin. If you priced it in terms of fiat, yes. But I think once you cross the few million mark, maybe in the 5 million range, I think that's when people stop accepting fiat currencies and they just accept sats. And that just becomes the new norm. So you'll never actually get to the point where, a Bitcoin is worth $1 trillion. We're going to switch completely off the fiat standard and onto the Bitcoin standard completely by that point. You pay maybe $10 a coffee right now. That's kind of ridiculous, right? And you might be paying $10, $15 for a hamburger. but your grandparents paid 15 cents for a hamburger. So once we go back to that once we go to that Bitcoin standard and we reprice to Satoshis, I think, people will be earning 15 sats an hour at minimum wage, if there's still such thing as minimum wages, but everything will sound more normal and you'll have normal numbers once again.
Samson Mow highlights the remarkable development of Bitcoin, which has surpassed all predictions with significant events like China's mining crackdown and El Salvador's adoption. He contends that despite these successes, the price of Bitcoin is still low because of the consequences of fraud and manipulation in the larger cryptocurrency market. He compares Bitcoin to a beach ball submerged, with its actual worth poised to soar once these forces subside. Mow is in favor of using the M notation to more accurately represent Bitcoin's enormous potential and expanding importance. In his ideal future, Bitcoin will completely replace fiat money as the accepted global standard, bringing forth a decentralized, streamlined financial system based on Satoshi Nakamoto's ideas. Mow challenges those like Michael Saylor who think fiat currencies and Bitcoin can coexist, arguing that faltering fiat systems would inevitably implode due to unmanageable debt and unstable geopolitics. In just 2 years, he believes, Bitcoin's price and popularity will skyrocket, drastically altering the world monetary system. Bitcoin has the potential to completely reshape the global economy when these revolutionary changes take place. Now let's get back and hear what he has to say.
I would say adoption is definitely ahead of schedule based on what I thought, 10 years ago. But price is definitely lagging. So what happens when there is this differential there is that one thing will catch very rapidly up with the other. And I don't think adoption is slowing. Therefore, price is going to accelerate in growth. So I've always maintained a view that Bitcoin is exponential in nature because adoption of technology is typically exponential, and money is even more foundational to civilization than basic things like a cell phone, right? So the adoption curve definitely should be approaching exponential. Now, exponential curves are very steep. So when you're predicting when it's going to happen, you think it's 5-10 years out, but because of that steepness of the curve, it's really difficult to say. I think it's honestly going to be next year. At the most, the next year after that. So within 2 years, we'll start seeing that very steep exponential curve. And it's just suddenly is very sudden and people will start to see it. So this is a very interesting one. There's kind of two schools of thought out there. I would say one school of thought is aligned with what I'm saying, which is Bitcoin will replace the dollar. And it's going to happen very quickly. People aren't going to expect it. And everything just gets priced into sats or Bitcoin. The other school of thought is, I guess, more the Saylor school of thought, which seems to believe in a coexistence. And some people that I've seen react to my posts online are very, very aggressively leaning towards this and denying the possibility that the dollar goes away. And it's hard to see these things happening. But I believe when fiat currencies fail, they just spectacularly fail. There is no real grace period because nobody wants it anymore at certain points, right? If I told you, Scott, I'll sell you 5,000 beaver pelts for dollars, would you want the beaver pelts if you don't need them? Would you take them as money? Probably not, right? So inferior monies just kind of disappear over time and stop being money, and they become either ornamental or collectibles or anything like that. So it reverts back to a more proto money. And then the other part is, I guess, can the dollar fail? And I believe that is a part of this equation because if you look at the debt right now, it's at 36 trillion, growing by $1 trillion a year. And that's going to accelerate because of the magic of compound interest. There's a school of thinking out there that the Department of Government Efficiency is going to fix this by cutting spending. But you can cut all the spending you want, but that debt is still going to compound at remarkably fast rate. And compounding is a wonder of the world. So it's good if you're compounding positively, but if you're compounding debt, it's pretty bad. So the question really is, can the US get out of this debt spiral? At the same time, the world is sort of geopolitically moving away from the dollar, and you have countries adopting Bitcoin as money at the same time. So the interplay of these three things is really going to be the determining factor of whether or not the dollar continues. And I'm, again, in the camp that it's not going to last. And it's just going to change the Bitcoin very rapidly. But I could be wrong. Maybe Saylor is right. And there is this coexistence. And you can see that coexistence in his Bitcoin 24 model. And what it is he tapers off growth at some point. I forgot where, but maybe after the 2030s. And then it's just kind of Bitcoin growth just stabilizes. And I think the assumption there is that it just coexists with the dollar indefinitely.
Samson Mow lays out his audacious and perceptive forecasts regarding the future of Bitcoin and its revolutionary effects on international banking. He admits that although Bitcoin's price has trailed behind, its acceptance is progressing far more quickly than he had predicted 10 years ago. He contends that this disparity cannot continue, and he projects that prices will quickly rise to keep up with the expanding adoption. Mow draws attention to the exponential character of Bitcoin, pointing out that, as a fundamental technology, its adoption curve is much more pronounced and revolutionary than that of other inventions like cell phones. He thinks that this rapid exponential growth will become indisputable in the next year or two, resulting in an abrupt and broad realization of Bitcoin's potential. Mow draws a comparison between his belief that Bitcoin would eventually supplant the dollar and establish itself as the norm worldwide, and the coexistence theory, which is supported by individuals such as Michael Saylor and contends that Bitcoin and fiat currencies may coexist. According to Mow, unsustainable debt levels, shifting geopolitical conditions, and the growing use of Bitcoin as currency are all contributing factors to the demise of fiat currencies like the US dollar. Lastly, he issues a warning about the U.S. spiraling debt and raises doubts about the dollar's ability to withstand such circumstances, particularly as more nations embrace Bitcoin. Mow is enthusiastic about a swift shift to a Bitcoin standard that will revolutionize international economy, even if he acknowledges that coexistence is possible. Thank you for watching, and as always, happy investing.